Hello everyone and welcome to this video. Here I will be creating a React application, an application that will manage a book in a library. I will open this folder with my code editor. Here I'm using Visual Studio Code, and I will create a new React application from scratch with Create React App tool. And we'll point the terminal to the folder. Here in my Visual Studio, I can open immediately the terminal, which will be automatically pointed to the open folder for this project. You type npx. Npx, it lets you use the library without installing it. You type npx create react app, which is the name of the tool or the library that we'll be using. Then you type a name of the folder that the application will be created inside of it. Now here in our situation, I already created the folder. I want the application to be created directly inside the folder, which I'll have to type dot and enter. After it has finished installing, setting up our application, you can run yarn start to run the server and check the application at localhost 3000, which is the 3000 is the default port for our application, and here it is. Now if we go and check the structure that the tool has created for us, we could see there's a src folder which contains the files that we will be working on. This is the application. And the public is the application once it has been the generated application. This is the application that will be run in the browser. Of course, we have the Webpack and Babel all set up by the React Create React app, has been set up and configured appropriately. And in package.json, we can see some library has been installed, React, React DOM, and some others. Now to get started, we have the app.js, which is the root component. This is a React component. This function represents a React component, and it has been exported by this file. We also have imported the style sheet for this component and a logo. Then in our index.js file, we import the app component, and this component then is appended to an element with an ID root. This element actually reside here in the public folder index.html. This is the element. Here we have all the script that you will be creating here in the src folder will be added to this file as a compiled JavaScript, and they will be run against this document. So this document will read this element and will insert the result of our script inside the root element. So this is what's happening here inside the render function of React DOM. Now, for our purpose, for our application, we don't need, of course, the logo and no CSS. We will remove the content of this component. We'll delete the CSS file. We'll delete also the index.css. We remove it here from the index. We'll delete also the logo. We'll save. In our app.js file, we'll create a title. Let's say something books library, and we'll save. If we check the browser, we'll see that everything has changed, and we have our title books library. So our first task is to create a form that will add new book, and it will save it to Google Firestore. So let's start by creating the form here. We'll start by creating the HTML. Inside the form element, we'll create an input for the book title, text. The name will be with an ID title, and another input for the book page number. Let's create first a label. And drop it with a div element. Now we'll create the input for page number of page. And one for the publishing date. And a submit button. This is our form. Here it is. Now for the styling, we'll address that later. For now, we have to control this, the value of these inputs with React. To be able to do this, we have to introduce states for this component. A state is like a variable, but is controlled by React. Whenever a change happens to this variable, React will re-render the components that that rely on this state. To create a state in a functional component, you need to import a library called useState from React. useState from React. useState is a new feature in React. It allows us to create state for functional component. In previous version, you cannot create state for functional component. You need to transform a functional component into a class component. But now here we can create a state in a functional component. All we need to do is create two constant, one called, let's name it book, and set book, which is equal to useState. Inside in the parameter for useState, we have to tell what is the default value for this piece of state, which is called book. So it will be an empty object. This object will hold the value for this input. Let's make it null. So use setBook to modify the state. By modifying the state with setBook, React can track these changes and react accordingly to these changes by rendering the component or the sections inside the component that has been affected by this change. We can't change this state directly with the variable book. You need to use setBook. Now, to create a controlled input, all we need to do is set the value to book. The value will be book, and on change, here on every time the user changes the value of the input, we'll have to change this piece of state, the book, using the setBook. So we'll create here a function. We'll create a function, or let's say a constant called on title change equal an arrow function. So we'll get here the event, and we use the setBook to a new object which will contain the previous value of the book, whatever the book object hold already. and title, which will be set to e.target.value. So here we have controlled our first input with React. The same thing for the other input. Here I made a mistake. It should be book.title. The same for each input. Also here let's say pages. Here on change, I'll be using the on title change. Another function for on pages change, and one for on publish, let's say date. What have we named it? On publish date. On publish date change. We name it here also publish date. So now we have our form controlled by React. Every time we make a change in any of those fields, it will be saved inside the book variable. We can check this by checking it in the browser. Here we have error, cannot read property title of null. Of course, here we need to set the initial for example, initial values to empty values, title, which is null. We have the pages by default, it's 0, or we can make it empty. And we have the publish date, we set it to null. And one thing I need to change here for the, I need to make it number. And for the date, let's make it date. Alright, so we have here a proper date field and the number field. So if we go to our developer tool and check our app component, we see we have our piece of state here, the book state. Let's refresh the page. Here is our piece of state, which is by default as we have set it up. Now if I change the title, let's say any title, the changes will be reflected in our object book. Same thing for page. And for the date too, let's change the date to something earlier. Alright, here is our date. So we have now the values entered by user in our object book. All we need to do is save them once the user have clicked on the save button. To grab the click action, or more appropriately the submission of the form, since this is a type, this button here, the save button, which is here, is of type submit. It will, once clicked, it will submit the form, and we can capture this event here by using the attribute on submit. And here we can run a function. Let's create this function. Let's name it first on submit, and create this function here on submit, which will be an arrow function. We don't need to use the event here. We have the all the value inside the book piece of state. Let's console.log the book state and see if everything works here concerning the on submit. We will need the event to prevent the default by typing here prevent default. This will prevent the page from reloading. So now if I reload the page, and type my book, number of pages 200, the date. If I click the save button by submitting the form, I will. Alright, here's the error. We have an error saying that the value should not be null for input, which we are using it here for published date. Let's make it empty here and reload to see if this error will go. Alright, perfect. Now my book, the number of page, let's say 200, the date, let's set any early date, and let's click save to see if we get the console.log. Alright, here we have the console.log, which everything is working as expected. Now our next step is to save this object to a database. Here in terms of front end, we need to send this object to an API. In our case, we will be sending this object to Google Firebase, which will be saved in a database. For each input or each element in the form, we are creating its own function that will be passed to the onChange event, which listen to any changes that happen to the input and runs the appropriate function. So here we have 3 input, we're creating 3 functions. What I see here is that there is some repetition. All these functions do the same thing. They set the book state. The only difference is the name of the input. So what we can do is we can merge these 3 functions into one function that we use it for all the input. So I will create constant onChange. I'll grab the event, and as the other function, I will set the book state to a new object. I'll spread the old one and override the appropriate field for each input. Here is the difference. So to grab the name of the input, we can do it using the event by typing e.target.name. This will return the name of the input. For example, for this one, the name is title. And we'll use this name to create a new attribute for this object, a new property. And we'll set the property value to event.target.value, same as before. Now we use this function for each input. We replace the specific function for each one with onChange, and we can remove the old one. This way we automated the work, and instead of having 3 functions, we have only one function, one variable. Now we can test our server. Yarn start. Let's open our developer tool. Let's check the state here. So if I type a name, I'll get it. If I type page number, okay, all is good. And date, here I have the date. Now if I submit, I should have in the console the object displayed. All right, everything work as expected. Next, we'll move to fix the onSubmit. Currently, we are logging the book object to the console. What I want to do is to save it to Firestore. First thing, I need to set up and configure Firebase before using Firestore. So to be able to do this, we need to create a project in our Firebase console online. So I will go to my Firebase console. And add a new project. I will name it books lib. I'll keep the analytics. I'll choose an account that I have, dummy account. Now after creating a project, we're ready to add Firebase to our application. We have to create an app inside our project. The app needs to be for the web, so I choose this option here, and I name my app Bookslip. Register app. The next step is to add Firebase to our project. In our case here, we need to install the module by typing yarn add Firebase add, choose the right version 1.1.1, but I already have installed it. It takes some time. I already did it. Here I have it in my package.json. I have installed the Firebase 8.1.1. If you don't have it, of course you need to install it with yarn add Firebase at 8.1.1. And once it's done, turn to the app creation and you type next. Here also you have to install the Firebase tool globally by providing the parameter -g. Once you have installed your Firebase tool globally with npm, also you type next. I already did it. Here I have it globally installed. Now I type Firebase login. I'm already logged in. Now after logging in, we run Firebase init, which will initialize our Firebase to be able to deploy. Yes. Now there's some option or features that we can activate here, depend on what we need in our app. I will activate a couple of ones related to Firestore, hosting and storage. Please select an existing option, use an existing project, create a new project at Firebase, an existing Google Cloud Platform. No, use an existing project, and we'll select the Booklib 5B5A0. Oh, what they are saying here is that we haven't activated Firestore in our console. Let's do this now. Let's go again to console. Since we have selected some features related to Firestore, we need to activate Firestore by going to Cloud Firestore and creating the database. We'll start in test mode. Here we choose a location for the server. I'll leave it as default. Alright, we can rerun the process. It should work. Firebase init. Again, the same questions. I will activate the same features I did in the last one. Use an existing project. Now it should work. I'll choose the default. I'll keep the default. What do you want to use as your public directory? Now, no, public won't work because in our Create React app the default is built, and this is what we need to use also for Firebase. So I'll name it build. Configure a single page app, yes. Set up automatic builds and deploys with GitHub, no. What file should be used for storage rule? I'll keep the default here. We have now completed the initialization of Firebase. Now we can deploy by typing Firebase deploy. Firebase deployed. But as you can see, if I deploy now, I have here the build created by the Firebase initialization, and we have a default welcome page that will inform us that everything is working fine. We can deploy it, why not? Firebase deploy. Here we will get an online link that we can run in the browser and see this page that has been deployed. Here it is, the link. If I click on this link and open it in my browser, this is the page, welcome Firebase hosting setup complete, as you can see. Now in order to deploy our applications that we are working on it now, we need to build it with yarn. To do this, we type yarn build, which will replace this folder build with our content. As you can see, the index.html in the build folder has been changed. Now we can deploy again with Firebase deploy. Now we can refresh again and see our application. Here it is. And here we have the object that has been logged in the console. So everything is working fine. We have Firebase ready. The next step, we will configure Firebase for our application, and we will get the Firestore to be able to save this book object to Firestore database. Alright, now let's import and configure Firebase. Here I'll create a file called setup firebase.js. I will import Firebase from Firebase. Make sure to add /app, Firebase /app, and I will import Firebase analytics. This is optional if you want to run analytics for your website. Then I will import Firebase /Firestore. Now I need to configure Firebase. To get the configuration, I will go to my console and go to my Booksleep project. Inside Booksleep project, I created an app also called Booksleep, which is here. If I access this app, in the general tab, I can go to Firebase SDK snippet. I have the config option here, which will give me the configuration. I'll pass it here. Inside this configuration, as we see, we have the API key, the OS domain, database URL, the project ID, storage bucket, messaging calendar, all this information that needed for configuring Firebase. Now I type firebase.initialize app, and I'll give it the config object, Firebase config. Now to run this file, I will import it in my index.js, import /setup Firebase. This will set up the Firebase. Now I can use anywhere in my application Firebase or Firestore. Like this, I will go to my app now and import Firestore from Firebase /app. Of course, you can import Firebase directly, and in your app you can use it by typing firebase.firestore. Let's keep it like this. I think it makes more sense. But anyway, we need to run the Firestore inside a variable, so we create constant db equal firebase.firestore. Here in our submit console, we need to send the book object to Firestore. We can do this by creating a books collection and add this object to the book collection. To do this, we'll need db to use the variable db that we have created here previously. db.collection, we'll name it books. This will create a books collection the first time, and if there is a books collection already available, it will retrieve this collection. Then I will add the book object. I'll keep console.log book for testing, and I will try now to run the application to make sure that it works. Now if I create a book, my test book, 200 pages, the date, any earlier date, and if I type save, okay, it seemed like it works, but we haven't created any checks to see if it works or not, which is actually it's not good, but we can see if it's worked by going to our console. To bookslib, our project, and Cloud Firestore. We see a books collection and we see our book here saved. All right. Now we need to add some checks to handle if in case if there's any error or in case success. We can do this by adding .then. We'll take a function and a .catch which catch an error. This will run once if in case there's an error. Now the success case will return a docref, will give us in the docref as a parameter, and here we'll get an error as the parameter. So if success, we'll console log docref, and in case there's an error, we console.error the error. So my test book 2, if I save, I'll get the object which has the ID here and some other information, but the ID here is the most important piece of information. So I will change here the console.log to docref.id. And now if I check the database again, I see I have two objects, my test book and my test book 2. Now we are successfully saving our book object to Firestore database, but there's one issue with saved data. This issue is with published date. It is saved as string. What we need it as a timestamp. So to solve this problem, we go to the onSubmit function. Here, when we add the book, the object, we send a new object, and we spread our book object, and we override the published date with a new date, new JavaScript date. We give it as a parameter the book dot published date, the input field date. This will transform it into a JavaScript date instead of a string. Now, if we try to save a new book object, let's say my book 3 or book 3, 300 page, and we choose any date. If we save, we get the ID in the console, and if we go to our database, Firestore database, we can see there's a third book, which is this one, book 3, and the published date now is a correct timestamp. This is important. It will help us to sort or order our collection. One more thing we need to do in the onSubmit function is to clear the form once it has been successfully saved. To do this, we set our book to empty, our book object to empty value. We set it back to this initial values. So set book. This will clear our input form, so we can add another book. One more thing, we need to disable the button and give the user information when we are saving the book, so the user can see that the application is loading. We can do this. First we set our function to async function, and we await this operation here. Before we start with this operation, we need to set some kind of a state to inform our component that we are loading something. We can do this by creating here a new state, constant loading, set loading equal useState. At first will be false, and before we start the save operation, we set the loading to true, and once the operation is done, whether it's successful or there's an error, we set the loading to false. And here in the button we create a condition to change the text here to loading if loading is true. So in JSX we can create a condition like this: if loading, else it will be safe. And we can disable equal loading. So it depends on loading. If it's if loading equal true, we disable the button, else it will not be disabled. Let's try it. To be able to see it clearly, first I will change my network speed to slow 3G. Alright, so it takes time to save, so we can see the loading here. So let's create book 4. Let's say 500 pages this time, and the date, save. As you can see, it is loading and disabled. Once it is saved, the form has been cleared, and this is the ID of our new object. We can check our database. We see a fourth object, book 4. Here it is. All right, perfect. In case there's an error, we need also to inform the user about the error. You can quickly solve this problem by creating here another state called, let's say, error for now. We will change that, maybe we change it later. useState null, let's say null. Now in case the document didn't save, we will get the error here. So we will inform the user about the error. First we'll set the error to an error occurred while trying save this document, save the book. And here we can also create a condition. If there's an error and in case error is true, it will continue. In case error is false, it will it will stop. It will not render the second condition. So we'll create an element here. Let's say for now we are not focusing on styling. Shortly we'll be fixing this, but I'll create a paragraph B. I'll give it a class error, and I will put the text message here, error. This is it for now. I prefer to put this inside the form element. Yes, here. Oh, there's one thing here. Since we are using await, we don't need the then and catch. What we can do is immediately after here we can run the success case, and to catch the error we add a try catch block. Alright, try catch block. Inside the try I'll add the code I need to run, and inside the catch I will copy paste the code that was previously handled inside the catch of a promise. Oh. Alright, this is if you are using async await, we don't need to add .then and the .catch. We can catch an error with try catch, and the success case will immediately follow after await. This code will wait. Once this returns success, it will continue to read the next statement. In case there's an error, it will throw it, and we will catch it with the catch block here. And for either case, either it is successful or we catch an error, we set the loading to false to signal that we're done with saving the object. So we can verify that this is working correctly by creating another book. So here we get an docref is not defined, line 31. Oh, one more thing here we need to do, since we're not using the block then of a promise, we need to catch the return of the operation inside a constant. Let's name it docref. Oh, so let me return the network to normal. Alright, so now let's add book 5. I guess we're in, yes, number 5. Pages, let's say this is a small book, 200 pages, date, and let's save it. So it is saved, book 5, the last one. This is our book 5 here. Oh, we noticed another thing, that the pages also is saved as a string. We also need to change this to make it number. So pages, we can transform the string to integer using parseInt, and we'll give it the book.pages. Now if I save another book, book 6, 250 pages, and date, it's saved. So let me check now the pages field, if it's a number. Book 6, it's number, which is great. So we have the save operation for our book application now complete. What we will do next is get the list of book and display it in this component for the time being. We'll display it here inside this component.